You learn from where you tripped and fall. I'm not going to call it a failure because you didn't fail. You learned that maybe that path had purpose, or you learned that maybe that isn't good, but you've learned something and you now know what you don't.
It's time to pivot in your confidence, career, and compensation with the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast every Monday and Thursday. Now, get ready for a special interview curated just for you. Welcome back to the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast, where we bring you insightful interviews with industry experts to help you navigate your career journey with ease and confidence. I'm your host, Candyce, and today we have a very special guest joining us today, and I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Chris Metter. He is a seasoned career strategist at Yes and Thinking with over 2 decades of experience in the tech, media, and entertainment industries. Chris specializes in helping individuals overcome career challenges and transitions, whether it's a change of industry, function, or situation. With a unique approach, Chris partners with his clients to identify the root of the problem, address assumptions and challenges, and craft a strategic plan to propel their careers forward. Now, before we dive into our conversation with Chris, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast. And if you find value in today's discussion, don't hesitate to share it within your communities and network. So now let's jump into the interview and gain some valuable insights from Chris on navigating career transitions and challenges. Welcome to the show, Chris. We are so excited to have you today.
I'm so thrilled to be here. It's such an honor. I mean, you said an inspired guest and insightful, and I was like, who's that going to be? Because I listened to you and I was like, oh, wait, it's me this time. This is fun. Let's hope I can do it.
Yes, I know. It's always interesting to hear your own bio. When we go around and speak and they introduce me, I'm like, oh, that's me. How impressive. So
that person's cool. That person's cool. I can't wait to meet them.
Yes, I think that plays a little bit on what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk just imposter syndrome. But before we hop into our topic for today, Chris, we know that you didn't just arrive at all these amazing accomplishments when you woke up this morning, as I always say. So just tell us more about you and your career journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey. It's a journey. And it's funny. I was, first of all, grateful for ChatGPT, go subscribe to it. But, really so much of my journey has been tripping, falling, and then figuring out what's next. And because I'm not someone who can overanalyze a situation. I need to run into it and then go, oh, this is what's happening. And so, for me, I love the career I've had, and I would never want to do it again. I started my career in advertising. I worked into marketing. I worked at amazing companies like NBC and then History Channel. Realized at some point that I had to pay for college for my newborn. So I shifted into tech because I heard they make more money. So I did some time, I did my time at Microsoft. And then, did a little bit more time at Facebook. And then did the magical decision of leaving Facebook on March 13th, 2020, when COVID hit, just because that's a date I'd selected earlier. And so for me, it became journey exploration. I realized that marketing was something that was so wonderful, but was not what I was destined to become. And that's when I made a pivot a few years ago into really being more people focused with experiences across recruiting, and now working on what I like to call this portfolio of helping people in their careers. I don't really know what I do for a living. So, we could analyze that at a later point, but what I know I want to do and the work I've done to figure that out is I want to help people be successful in their careers because that's where I know I've always been best.
Awesome. No, and I appreciate your candor and vulnerability in sharing that I got here from tripping and falling. Right? And the 5-Minute Career Hack team can attest to this as well. And that's actually what we say often, that gives us authority and gives us the power to talk about and coach the things that we have is not because we did it all right. is because we made a ton of mistakes and we took the lessons from those mistakes to propel ourselves and now taking those same lessons to help others as well. So I think that needs to be said more often. And I'm so glad you led in with that because it's definitely,
Yeah.
it's a gem. It's a hack.
Well, I'm going to say it again. You learn from where you tripped and fall. I'm not going to call it a failure because you didn't fail. You learned that maybe that path had thorns, or you learned that maybe that didn't feel good, but you've learned something and you now know what you don't want. When you succeed, what happens is you don't actually, you learn, you went, well, when I did all these things, it worked out. But then if you repeat those things again and it doesn't work out, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. That's how I succeeded because, well, no, maybe it just worked that time. You don't know. And you have to trial and error. And I really, I feel like for me, it's been interesting as I've embarked on this, new generation of my career, my new career era. I feel like we're all in eras right now. And so as I embark of it, part of the way I've really thought about it is myself as the product, which is, and it's something that as I've learned is how I coach others, which is remove your name, remove your feelings, remove your emotions, and just look at yourself as a product. Who uses you? Who likes you? Where are you great? Where do you solve a problem? What breaks you? How many times do I use the wrong screwdriver and then break the screwdriver? It's not the screwdriver's fault.
Right.
I used the wrong screwdriver.
Right.
And it's that same lessons you need to get to. And I really think that this idea of being able to look at your career and understand these elements gives you this perspective to the point you were making earlier. You learn in the downtimes, you learn through what's hard, you learn through trial and error, and then you're able to make more informed decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I want to underscore a point that you made too around, if you do something well, then you think you can go and just continue to do that thing over and over again. This is going to keep working well. And the
Yeah.
neat thing about business careers is it's an ever evolving thing. The way I did work when I started my career in 2000 is not the same way. The things that made me successful back then is not the same way. So it requires.
Also, remember fax machines? Remember fax machines?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, right?
Right. So
We
business.
used fax machines.
Yeah, absolutely. Business is evolving and so do we. We evolve as well. So it requires that constant reflection, acknowledging your mistakes, acknowledging the lessons. When you were talking, I was thinking about what we call it 5 minute career hack, the brag notes. That's you writing down, hey, here's the things that I've accomplished. But I think a part of brag notes is here are the things that I've overcome, the obstacles that stood in my way, the trips and falls. And here is what I learned and how I overcame those obstacles. That's all a part of the career story. And it's a necessary part of your story that you've got to acknowledge so that you can continue to write that narrative, right?
I also think to where you're going, and first of all,
Yeah.
love the brag notes. And I think everyone should do brag notes. I think you should take those brag notes and you should stare in the mirror and go, you're bragging about you. Remind yourself, like these aren't words connected to this magical person out there. That magical person is the person in the mirror. That's kind of neat too. But to the point you're going is, and a lot of what I also hear in this is, and this is the hardest thing. I'm going to go straight to the hardest thing to do because that's just what I'm allowed to do now that I'm working on it is how to be a little less judgmental to yourself. How to
be less
judgmental, judgmental. How to be a little bit more loving. How to allow yourself, to be, because the thing that is amazing about a career is it's a fingerprint. It's yours. How you shape it, what happens, what you do, it's yours. And you are uniquely situated to tell that story, to put those pieces together, to really reflect and think about it. I found when I was a hiring manager, some of the best hires I gave, or I hired, not I gave, so I didn't give them anything. I gave them a job, but really they gave me amazing work, right. Which was they were able to say to me, this is what I didn't do well. And I'm going to reflect on it. And here's what I learned as I think about how I'm going to position myself moving forward. and the boundaries I'm going to set and what success now looks like.
Yeah.
And as a hiring manager, that's a powerful conversation because I'm now talking to an adult who knows themselves, who's very clearly laying out for me how they're going to work and show up. And I've actually gained a little bit of trust because you're also dealing with a stranger building a relationship. Like you've changed the whole paradigm. And that's just by telling your story and allowing your story to be all the elements of the story, the ups, downs, and the middles. They all make a compelling story.
Yes. Yes. It also shows you as a continuous learner as well.
Yeah.
Thinker, continuous learner. When you said that, it triggered me to think about something that when I was a hiring manager as well, I would actually really want them to talk about times where they failed or they messed up. I know you don't like the word failure, but the goal wasn't completed, right? They did
Yeah.
not, and
Well,
what
something in the
you
business
learned
failed.
from it.
And
What
that's
did you
fine.
learn
You
from it?
didn't fail.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
absolutely.
didn't fail. And I think
Right.
the word failure is not a bad word.
Yeah.
It's not a bad word. Things fail all the time. And let's own when things fail.
Right.
But you don't have to say, I failed. You
Right.
don't have to take it on because if you take it on, then you can't solve it because you're too busy then looking in the mirror going like, oh, you failed versus going, no, what did I learn?
Right.
What did I learn? Fine. Maybe I did fail, but I'm not going to judge myself. What did I learn?
Yeah.
And frankly, that learning, so think about, I look about it this way. Imagine you're going into an interview where the business that you're interviewing with is about to do the work stream that you just saw fail.
Mm-hmm.
Your insights are powerful.
Exactly.
And frankly, those are the insights they want to hear. They want to hear what would you have done differently? How'd you think about it? What did you learn? Where'd it go? Walk us through it because that shows, and you being able to track, follow, and say, yeah, I would have done differently this time, think about it this way, do it that way, shows that, okay, then you're someone who can help steer us when we go off track, when we go sideways, when we don't understand
Yeah. Yeah. No, I call that the cherry on top. That cherry on top
it.
is what I learn and how can I now apply this lesson to the next thing that I do in my business, my career, and even in this, even in your personal development as well. Lessons come there also. So I'm definitely aligned with you on the cherry on top approach because it does, it allows you to be a better business leader. It makes you far more valuable in terms of how you can lead projects forward because you've experienced the ups and downs of what that goal and objective was. So, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think what you talked about in terms of you being the product, right? So you're helping people in your business learn how to market themselves at Yes and Thinking, right? So just talk
Mhm.
to us more about Yes and Thinking and how you help people drive that objective forward of
Sure.
making themselves as the product more marketable outside of just the learnings and the things that we did that were tripping inside you. But what are some of those other elements of you marketing yourself as a product that you do at Yes and Thinking?
Yeah. So my funny story is I was a theater major in college. I mean, it's shocking when people meet me. They're like, "Oh, really? You were a theater major, Chris?" And I thought I was going to go into an acting career, and I didn't because I had a panic attack when I was like 21 that I wouldn't have health insurance, and I didn't really understand what that meant, but I knew I'd be. And that's what it was communicated. So my whole career has been built about trying to get health insurance. So that's super. But going back to the yes and yes and comes from it, and the whole idea of yes and is that you can't always control what's coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily control what's happening around
Cool.
you. Things happen. Things just happen. But what you can do is say yes and let's get to work and let's figure this out and let's work through it because it's my wife and I say this to a lot. The only way out is through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard and I think you and I could probably talk about this for longer than people would want to listen to about all the times it's been. That like when you get hit by getting laid off or being 6 months into a job search and just not seeing traction or frankly being at a company which isn't working anymore and you don't know what to do next or you're at a ceiling and you don't know why you're at a ceiling. You know you're at a ceiling,
Right.
but you don't know why. Those things start to churn you. They start to make it, you start to become about you. I mean, if you heard me up front, really talking about non-judgment and moving away. And so I'm starting up there because what for me, what becomes really important is that I'm not a therapist. I'm not helping there, but I do also believe you have to pull those things forward. That you have to name it. You have to move it forward because if you can name it, you start to realize it's not as scary as you think it should be.
Right.
And you can find ways to solve it. You can find ways to work through it. So I created Yes and thinking in this idea that the only way out is through. And really so much of the work is, traditional coaching. It be in the sense that, I truly believe the person I talk to has the answers. The same way that I kind of discovered that I had a lot of the answers. I just was blocked. I was blocked. And I didn't have a guide to help me figure out what it is I wanted to reflect, what it is I was trying to think through and work through. And so, part of it is that work. Part of it is like actually getting crisp on what's the career story? Starting to figure out this idea of like, what's your career story and what's the product fit you're looking for?
Right.
Meaning, like, what's the market saying? What are you hearing? How do we put it together? Because the story is only as strong as the reader who reads it. It's not for the author. The story is for the reader. So how do you actually put that reader in mind? They call it a law candidate market fit. But essentially what it is that where are you great? What's that value? Where do you fit in the market? How does that story fit in? How do you think about it? And then the other piece then becomes then what's the plan to get there? Because I don't have all my answers right now. I have very little of my answers, but I got a plan.
Yeah.
I got a plan. And every day I work that plan. Every day I work that plan. And when I work that plan, I reflect and go, okay, great. This is what I learned, this is what I did, what not. And then I go, plan's still good. Yeah. And then I bring in a coach on a monthly basis to go, hey, let's do the plan reflection. Where are we at? We're working on this. Get feedback, then get through a reflection and work it through. And that to me is really the outcome I want to get to. It's why I talk about myself as a strategist, because I think sometimes people can hear a coach as, well, I'll ask you, I'll put it out to you. You've had great coaches before, right?
Of course.
But you've probably had some not so great coaches.
Of course. Absolutely.
And that not great coach sticks in your craw. I think about my not great coaches all the time. And it actually it was part of the reason why I was scared to become a coach, because I would think about that and then go, but aren't I learning what I don't want to be? Aren't I learning who I want to be and where I want to go? And why am I allowing someone else's issues to stop me from actually trying to become what I think I could be?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think part of the work is also helping, and I think your podcast does that, and just your essence does this, is also helping people understand like what a real good coach should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you, to your point, it's not a bad thing to have had a bad coach or a bad boss or a bad experience in a certain situation.
Nope.
I probably told this story earlier in my career, speaking carefully, I learned the most from having bad bosses because it helped me to develop my leadership style, right? It helped me to understand who I did and didn't want to be, and start to change the narrative about what others expected from me in leadership and modeling something different from them. So I count it a blessing. We called it trial by fire back when I was in the workplace, but I learned something from it, and it's still an important part. To your point, it's an important part of our story. Is even those tests of fire, trials by fire, bad advice, and then also to your point around judging yourself, not judging yourself. There's been times where I given out bad advice to people, right?
Yeah.
Because it was what I knew at the time and what I understood to be true at the time.
That's right.
I went and I, projected that forward, and it doesn't make me a bad person. I'm not judging myself about it. I just now have an increased awareness and increased understanding, right? To do something
Yeah.
different in the way that I'm carrying forward my business, my coaching, my mentoring, my strategy, wellness work. I can take all
Yeah.
those things into account and do so with confidence and authority because I've
And intention.
works and intention. There, you're exactly right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I think the word intention is a word that I think has taken a deeper meaning for me in the past few years as I start to understand. And I think it really, is very forward in my coaching, which is that look, I'm this is who I am. I'm a silly teddy bear. Like I really am. Like there's no other way. Like this is me. At the same time, I'm gonna let you get away with it.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
and it's and because I got in not and if you're not ready to work on it, then that's fine. Like then we should work together. Like that, that's part of the thing that you always have to figure out is like what's the partner, what are you looking for, what's there. Where I have been, successful to date, and truthfully, where I show up my strongest, is when someone can walk in and go, I know I got to work on something.
Yeah.
Like I know what the external issues are that are happening. I can't find a job. I can't. I'm stuck in a job, whatever it might be. But they're walking into the session and the conversation, going, "These are the truths I'm dealing with, and I know that I got to work."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's intention and accountability. And I just think like that to me is two of the best traits you can have in the world.
Love it. Intention and accountability. Put that in the chat if you're listening to this. Intention and accountability. Chris Metter says those are two of the most important traits that you need as you navigate your business and your career journey. Love
Absolutely.
it, Chris. So I think the work that you do, very similar to 5 Minute Career Hack, is extremely important. I think it's purpose work, it's hard work. We spend a majority of our time, right, in our lives, in our careers, right? We got to make a living. And so to be able to get this right, I think is extremely important. So thank you for just all the work that you do for the community and all those that you serve. And I wanted to highlight that because one of the topics that we're going to chat about today is around imposter syndrome, which to your point earlier, just a few minutes ago, is when you get with a client, you all are talking about the truths, not the feelings that are associated with those truths. We want to acknowledge those and figure out what it is, but
Yeah.
it's the
But we're
truth.
not therapists. We're
Right.
not
We're not
therapists.
therapists, but
We're
it's
not therapists, not feelings. The
absolutely
truths are how you
the
build
truths.
plans.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can't create a strategy with
That's right.
feelings. You have to have
That's right.
the data, the information, the
That's
experiences,
right.
all those things in order to create that strategy. But one of the things that research varies, but it's upwards of 70% of professionals, whether they are in entrepreneurs or in the have a career path for corporate America, are challenged with imposter syndrome, where they are believing things that are not true. And I was just going to say that I see you raising your hand, including the two faces that you see on this call today, right? Or on this video today. And so it doesn't mean that we can't. And if you haven't listened to the 5 Minute Career Hack, we're doing a series right now on imposter syndrome. It's just the first couple of installments, but I'm going to talk about this several times throughout the balance of the year. It's extremely important to understand that you can still be a coach and be working through. So we get to coach people through something that we're actively working on, which it still allows us to be an authority. So I want to acknowledge that because Chris and I are going to have a short conversation about imposter syndrome because we know that it's impacting people to be able to acknowledge those truths and take action on it to get from point A to point B in their careers. So, Chris, if you don't mind sharing either story, a personal story of how you realized, "Hey, I got imposter syndrome." I know when I first looked at the definition of it and then I started studying the types, I was like, oh, my picture may as well be in this right here next to this definition of imposter syndrome. But so I had a deep bout of self reflection once I discovered and studied imposter syndrome more. But I'd love to just hear more from you of how you got into this being a part of your work and just what you discovered about yourself on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go there and be really honest with
Go there.
you.
Go there. This is my career hack.
My imposter syndrome burned me out in 2019. I, we can, I couldn't get past a level. I couldn't get past a title. I was getting incredible reviews though and accolades.
Yeah.
But the thing that I thought I needed, the title, the level, the next rung, I wasn't getting. And I then spun myself harder, like a hamster in a wheel. And just like, I don't know, I'm never letting my kids get hamsters. But I know that when I had it, I'm like, they would just literally, I had a hamster that I thought was going to make like melted the plastic, spun the wheel, like no one's business, burning it, whatnot, burning itself out. And that's what I was doing. And unfortunately, I guess I don't have the energy of a hamster, and I need to take a break. And I share it because, it was this weird reflection to go, okay, I worked at these companies that people reach out to me and go, I want to work for those companies. I want to work for Facebook. I want to work for Microsoft. I want to work for NBC Universal. And I was sitting there going like, okay, what, that's cool. Why does that matter to me? Like not even associating that like, oh, look what I did. Or I couldn't take a compliment. I couldn't like someone say you did a good job here. I was like, oh yeah, it was all great. It was all great. It was so great. So great. And I'd run away because I actually thought if I took the compliment, they'd catch me in that I actually wasn't really good at my job.
Mm.
And so if they caught me, I'd get in trouble. So if I didn't take the compliment, they wouldn't catch me because I wasn't saying I was good. And it's just like, it was messed up. It was messed up. And it was those feelings. It was those comments. It was that continual self-hate. Let's be real clear. So much of it there's so much self-hate. So much judgment. If self-hate's the wrong word for you, just judgment. And I think, part of it is what is it judging? Like what was I judging myself for? And the thing that I realized, it took me a few more years to figure it, unfortunately, but the thing that I realized when I was judging it for is that I didn't want to be in work. And I didn't want to be in it. And actually, somewhere, I think my judge was trying to help me. I think this imposter was trying to actually say something to me, was trying to say, you don't feel good. You are not feeling here. You're feeling this imposter. What is it? And the minute I did that work, it was, whew, might have had a bottle of wine that night. Weed's legal in my state. And like, it's just, look, we all got to cope. But like, you get through that and you get to the other side of it and you go, okay. For me, I had to go, well, I just stumbled onto this truth that I don't want to do this role.
Yeah.
And it's actually, and somewhere for me, and I don't think imposter is always this, but for me, I actually think like it was trying to tell me something that was really important.
Yeah.
And it took me a few years to get myself to the point where I could hear it and not be scared by it. And to be willing to lean into it and go, let's list out the issues. Well, let's see here. I make money with marketing. I know how to do marketing. I can employable in marketing. Yikes, what do I do next? But I could then say it. Because on the other side, I could say, but doing this job is truly making me a less good person.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And that was part of my own other work that, I'll share here because I think it's important reflection because you can't, look, we've all learned there is no work, there is no home, there's just you.
Yeah.
You are you. And you are shades of yourself, but you are you. And I think what I learned was when I started bringing more joy from my work, I brought more joy into my home. Now, granted, I'd like to see a little more joy of figuring out how to make sure I consistently pay a mortgage down. But those are truth. I mean, but those are truths you deal with when you make this
Yeah.
change. It's just truth you deal with, and I can laugh at it. It's both a truth and it's fun, and I'm going to the extreme because that's how I go,
Right.
and that's okay. And but like I say it out loud because I also know like this is a truth I'm dealing with. But even that feels better than when that imposter was standing over me at Facebook.
Right. Right. So you face the imposter, you figured out the truth.
That one. That one.
Right.
That one. Just that truth. I got a lot more. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Like I'm not you.
It's just
Don't worry.
yeah, so there's lots of truth, but you were able to figure out one that was derailing you from feeling fulfilled.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And that's really the crux of my journey,
Yeah.
but also why I think, when you think about, one thing I think is important to think about imposter is, you can get focused on what it feels like, what it causes, what not. But I think it's also important to talk about like what are the detriments of it?
Yeah.
It doesn't allow you to communicate your value.
Right.
You're talking down about your value. I mean, I hear that all the time from when I start coaching with folks. When I hear value, when I hear them talk about what they love, and then when I hear them talk about their value, and they can't put the two together,
Right.
and you're like, no, but they're together. Like you're like, well, I never saw myself like that. I was like, okay, okay. So I mean, I think it is. I think it becomes career limiting. It becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. I think it also does take you to see things from a perspective of a less positive place.
Right.
I think it lives in a darker area of your brain, and it allows you to then look and explore what are some of your harder thoughts there. And you should think about them. I don't believe in toxic positivity, but there's a balance to everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think too what I'm hearing is and one of my previous guests just brought used this term and now I'm hearing it here in a different context of you went on a she says go on a listening tour.
I went
Want
on a
to
listening tour.
highlight that listening tour also includes you having one of the most important conversations that you have is the one that you have with yourself, right?
It's the first advice I give to people if I'm coaching them if they've been laid off. Is I go, you need to shiva. Shiva is is a Jewish term for the immediate days after someone has passed,
Yeah.
and the whole point of it is to mourn, to
Mm,
mourn, to just lean in, to wallow. You sit on chairs that are a little lower to the ground. You cover mirrors so you don't have to stare at yourself. You just mourn. And it's the first thing. And so I talk a lot about in terms of layoff Shiva. Go have that Shiva. Go lay it, go, go deep into it because you're allowed to feel and you're going to feel again. I mean, like it doesn't matter. But if you give yourself that space, what I find is it also is then giving your space, then say, I'm getting those words out.
right.
And now I'm going to try and allow some space for maybe some other thoughts in my head to come out as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're so right around mourning, right? Because you realizing that the truth that I've told myself about who I was, what I was capable of, or whoever embedded that truth in me, whether it was culture or whether it was a family pattern, is not true. So you've got to mourn who you thought you were or how you treated yourself. So that's the grief. You got to go through the grief process. I was somewhere just last week and I was talking about, they asked, how do you cope with job loss or cope with those types of things? I said, go through the entire grief process and be okay with that. So you got your, anger, you got your denial, you got your depression, you got your
Arguing,
all those
arguing,
things.
like
But you also
everything.
have then once you get through that, you can actually get to acceptance, which is not judging yourself, but just calling it to your awareness, accepting it for what it is. Now let's create the strategy that you can
That's right.
that you have with a coach, but it requires the self-work because coaches can't help you overcome imposter syndrome. We can give you tools, which I'm going to navigate us to the next question where you could share some tools and we can
Mhm.
have a quick conversation about that before we wrap up. But we can
Yeah.
share tools, but it requires you to acknowledge and just accept your new truth, right? Accept your new
Yeah.
truths, to your point, right?
Yeah.
So that you can now take action steps to get you closer to what you map out on that
Yeah.
strategy. So if you had to share, Chris, before we wrap up with our last question, a few tactics that you coach folks on, or maybe that you've
Sure.
applied in your career or your business journey, if you could share a couple of hacks of now that you have that truth, you've gone through that warning as you talked about, what are a couple of things that you would suggest that people do to start to overcome imposter syndrome?
What a great question. So one of the first things that I did the first time I was laid off was took 3 days and made a point where I carved out a few hours where no phone, no interruption, whatnot, and just started writing down everything in my career that I was proud of and want to talk about, like stats, details. And the reason I say go longer is because you'll write it for about 15 minutes and then you'll be like, I'm done. It's like, no, 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 no. So many more layers. There's so many more ways you're thinking about it. You just need to start getting it out. You got to get into that behavior and habit. So that's a big thing I recommend right there. The other thing I'm going to go straight to is networking. Is like I really think that so much of the strategy I look to create is networking. I don't think most folks though think about networking necessarily. They think about it as a take versus what's your gift, because networks are communities. They're organisms. So how are you giving? How are you building? How are you growing? So example I would give, which is let's say you're in my shoes and you were a marketer and suddenly I no longer want to be a marketer. You start networking with people who, I looked at it and said, okay, well, it'd be interesting. I should go network with people who were in my shoes, who have made career pivots out of marketing. Even if it's not the pivot I want, there's insights there. And I also know when I reach out to them and say, hey, I'm going through this. So I'm leading with my truth. I'm going through this. I'm working through this. You've done X. I'd love to connect with you. You get a faster response and a faster way through the door is you're actually leading with this intention. And you're saying, I want to connect with you. Here's the value exchange. Here's what I'm going to give you because I'm actually complimenting you before you give. And everyone loves to talk about their career and they're talking about a thing that's important. So that's a big part of it there is like, think about how you network. And I know there's probably people listening going like, I don't have a network. I email me. I dare you. I dare you
There's
to let me show you. And because everyone has a network, whether it's the people you're connected to, whether it's the degrees beyond, whether it's like, I think what happens sometimes is folks think very focused of like, well, here are the people I work with. But your network is any person you've built a relationship with. So start building relationships. If you're thinking like, oh, I want to pivot into climate tech. Okay. I have a lot of friends who pivot into climate tech. Well, on LinkedIn, start liking those people. Start following them. Start commenting on their posts. Don't be weird. Don't be like, oh, you're so great. Go, this is really neat. Start building a relationship. Because you can like a relationship's not just built through knowing someone from school or like it's built through multiple touch points. And what I've learned is that like start learning about them, start going in and you can start to expand your network in a very methodical and intentional. And so really my biggest advice is really around networking. Is your network is your way out. It just is. It's where you're going to learn. It's where you're going to get passed along. And if you're clear of what it is that you want,
right,
your network will unlock for you. If you enter going, well, I just need to use it to get a job, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It'll do what it'll do. It's all I got to do is going to do. And you're then going to say to me, well, my network didn't work. And I said, well, what did you do? I said a bunch of emails saying, I like your company. I want to work for you. It's like, well, yeah, that's, you tried to take from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking like, what if you tried giving to it?
That's not.
What if you said
it's a transaction? It's an exchange, right?
It's exchange, exactly right. What if you gave to it? What if you reached out to people who used to be in your job and say like, hey, I used to have your job. If I can help you in any way, I have these insights. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Maybe they need help. Maybe they need the help that you didn't get. And maybe that act of reaching out allows you to create that relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just being a human with a human. That's what I learned in coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look at you and I. What? This is our second time chatting. We've had some texts, and I love you and can't wait to hug you
I
because
can't
that's
wait either.
because we built a relationship with intention.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's the world we're in right now, is that people want that connection and that community. And so whenever you feel like I don't have anything to say, stop and go, no, we live in a world now where we all want connection and community,
Yeah.
where we're craving it and we're a Zoom call away from being able to have it. It's not hard anymore.
Right. Right. No, I think
Yeah.
what you said is so important, and it's actually not even what I was expecting you to say. We talk about imposter syndrome. It's always the self work and to go reflect and go and separate so you can understand this and you can go back out into the world. So you can go and look at the series that we're doing, and it talks about a lot of that self work of facing your inner
Yeah.
critic and challenging your truths and understanding the barriers, not faking, being real, all those things that I talk about. But what Chris has given us in terms of practical strategies, it also requires you to go out into community because relationship, being in community is one of the most important things that we're going to do, right? We can't succeed in businesses and career without being in community. And that's actually, I don't know if I've heard this as a solve or as a even a step for overcoming imposter syndrome is go network, right?
Go network.
Like
Hear people tell you you're great.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I talked about was go get feedback. And that's also a form of networking as well. If you're trying
Oh,
to
100% is.
understand your accomplishments and the things that you can't convince yourself of, go and network and talk to people who have worked with you, who you've crossed paths with, who led you, your family, even the person who is going to be hard on you about the feedback, and also the person who may be a little bit too easy on you. That's also a part of networking and relationship building as it relates to being able to overcome or navigate through imposter syndrome. I absolutely love the approach and take that you took there. And I think that, go ahead, I'll let you go. Yeah.
I was going to say also mentorship. Everyone needs a mentor. Everyone needs a mentor. And I'm just not saying finding a mentor, find someone to mentor.
So yeah, no, I think that networking is a great approach. So you got one more hack to share in terms of overcoming imposter
mentorship.
Yeah,
mentorship. And I don't mean in terms of you finding a mentor. Everyone needs a mentor. You find someone to mentor. Everybody is looking for a mentor. And you might go, oh, well, I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, what is it that you can offer? And there's someone out there. And a lot of times mentor relationships aren't all like, hey, will you become my mentor today? It's you picking up the phone with someone could maybe benefit from a phone call and say like, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Just was thinking of you. Want to connect. Anything I can ever help you with? And when you're able to give in that way, you also start to realize that you're not alone in how you're feeling. And look, I think some of the most powerful work in working through your own imposter is actually seeing the progress in others.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. So write down your accomplishments, network in a giving and receiving relationship, and then mentor and be mentored. I absolutely love those as three of we're not saying these are the solves for everybody who has imposter syndrome.
No.
But definitely three go-to steps that we can take, right, to start to overcome and defy our imposter syndrome. So, Chris, as we always end our podcasts, and let me say this too before I transition us here. I know this is not the last time that we are going to be live or talking. As Chris said, we've been networking and building a relationship as well. So this is the start of something I think is going to be amazing. But as we always in our podcast, I would like for you to share your final 5 words with our audience. I know you've given at least 5 hacks already, but your final 5 words that you share with the audience.
I did. I wrote down 5 final words, actually. When you said it, it just popped in my head. Do what fills your bucket. Do what fills your bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. You got to do what fills your bucket, not somebody else's bucket, not culture's bucket, not your family's bucket. Yes.
You got one career.
Yeah.
You got one. This is like, it's a journey you're figuring out. But if you can focus on what's filling your bucket, what is helping you see yourself, what is helping you understand the value you bring, your uniqueness, someone that sees you, that understands that, if you can walk away and go, I understand my value, well, that's just powerful. So do what fills your bucket.
Absolutely. And I think if I could add to that, it's also too knowing when your bucket is empty, right?
Oof.
And you've got to go and refill that bucket. So I decided I wanted to drop that gem as we end because that's probably where we're going to pick up. But Chris, I am so grateful for you, for your time today, your incredible insight, all the work that you and your team do at Yes and Thinking. We appreciate you sharing the stage with us today. And listen, if you are watching this, be sure to follow Chris Metter, Yes and Thinking. Leave us comments on this episode, questions you have about imposter syndrome, barriers that you're still experiencing. Listen, Chris and I shared at the beginning of this that we're still navigating imposter syndrome, so we are not exempt. So that means that you're not alone, and we want to hear from you, and we want to help serve and support you. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you. And until next time, my friend.
Thank you so much.
I truly hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed doing it for you. However, it doesn't have to end there. Come on over to our Facebook group community right now for free. You're going to get exclusive content that we weren't able to include in this episode as well as past episodes. We've got challenges, we've got research, we've got lives, you name it, all for you in bite-sized chunks so that you can continue this development journey. Go ahead, click the link right now in the description show notes, and we'll see you there.